Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 9th of February, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar, and the dollar has been a bit flat the last 24 hours, but still holding its short-term bullish position and holding the gains that we've seen over the last week or so. So we are still just seeing that short-term strength kicking in. Euro is flat as well against the dollar, but we are still below the cloud here, so we're still in bearish mode in the short term. Japanese yen, we're seeing the dollar has fallen back. The yen being a safe haven really for the turmoil that we've seen in markets the last week. So we are just seeing flows into the yen. Sterling had a jump yesterday on the Bank of England's statement that interest rates might rise a bit faster. But interestingly, we fell back. We haven't yet made it through the cloud on the lagging line on the short term against the dollar, whereas with sterling we have. The key thing will be to break higher than that level that we saw yesterday. We do have a downside target here hanging over us, but we do also have upside potential on the medium-term chart of around 10%. So quite a mixed picture there for sterling. Against the Swiss franc, again, it jumped yesterday and fell straight back, but we are just seeing signs that sterling is finding some support here. And against the Australian dollar, it's nudging new highs, so quite key there. Bitcoin had actually a good day yesterday. It was strange to see that Bitcoin was the bright spot in market turmoil, but we held on to the $8,000 level. We're back just below 8,000 this morning, but we are in bullish short-term territory on the cloud and finding some support on the lagging line on the daily cloud. We do have some short-term downside targets hanging over us to about 7,500 downside. Interestingly, we have this upside target to $10,600 if we break higher than the level that we've seen here. So we break to a new high there and we activate this upside target, some 33% upside. So it will be interesting to see whether Bitcoin can get back above that $8,500 level. Of course, Bitcoin can do that easily in a day. We're seeing big percentage changes occurring throughout the day. The S&P 500 index, we see here the price now closing below the cloud, with the lagging line still finding support on the cloud. So a little bit too early to say that we're in a new bear trend here. With the Nasdaq, again, price just settling on the cloud, lagging line still above the cloud, short-term bearish, closing below the low that we saw earlier in the week. So that is bearish, and we have activated this downside target to 5672 for the Nasdaq 100. That's 10% downside. So it is looking more worrying after yesterday's move, but we are still holding the bull trend. Of course, the long-term bull trend is still intact as well. The Dow, much the same picture as you might expect, just finding support on the cloud. So all of these indices really find support on the cloud. Activated a downside target some 13% lower with this close below the level that we saw on Tuesday. So today will be a pretty critical day for US stock market indices. Can we close higher on the day and not end the week a lot lower than we started? So it will be interesting to see. We look at the Russell 2000. Here we are actually moving below the cloud, and you'll recall that earlier in the year I've been saying at the beginning of last month the shortage of upside targets on most of these indices was a concern. We still do have them on the Russell 2000, but we are still now bearish below the cloud. We need a few days bearishness to confirm this. I like to see 3 closes below the cloud before I'd actually say that was a new change in trend. But the key thing is that's come well and truly under pressure. But looking to the futures, the S&P 500 future is up 0.75% at the moment, so we might see the US Open a little bit higher on that sentiment, and the Nasdaq E-mini some 0.82% up at the moment, just teetering along the bottom. Interestingly, we didn't make a new low on the future. We found support around this level. So key thing here is, can we recover? We are just sitting there on the cloud. FTSE 100 down 0.4%, not as much as you would have expected after that move in the US last night, but it's also watching these futures markets with interest. So we are just seeing here the downside target medium term potentially activated. Of course, we're well and truly bearish below the cloud, unlike the US markets. So FTSE looking pretty grim. And that stronger sterling having an impact, of course, because a lot of UK blue chip companies have their earnings in sterling. Looking at the FTSE 250, picture is much the same. Down this morning by a similar amount, but just teetering on the bottom, waiting really for the US market to open with bated breath. The the DAX index in Germany, well and truly below the cloud as well. Interesting, up slightly this morning, very, very slightly. In fact, it's just turned slightly negative again. It's teetering at a 0% change here at the moment. But really, we're just seeing here that it's bearish and bearish in the short and medium term. Downside target some 10% lower. Again, we're now waiting for the US market to open. The Nikkei was off 2%. Not quite below the cloud on the medium-term chart yet, but really just closed right on it with a lagging line. So it's ended the week right on the cloud. It'll be interesting to see if we can bounce next week. The Hang Seng down some 3%. Hang Seng having risen very strongly in 2017. So still year to date very much ahead, but really unwinding a lot of this move. So 3% down, and the Shanghai local market down 4%. So the Chinese market really coming off quite strongly. A lot of sell-off there. So Sensex down only 1%, and holding its bullish position on the cloud. Shanghai is definitely not holding that position. The Australian market actually sitting on the cloud as well, so that's quite key. We are just sitting on support there. Brent crude down now below the $65 level, so really just falling lower. Lots of downside targets that have been given and being met. So we are seeing Brent really falling back quite sharply now. And WTI, much the same picture with a new downside target of $59. So sub $60 looks quite possible now. We're sitting at $60.50. US nat gas fell yesterday. Storage numbers obviously didn't surprise to the upside. So here we are seeing fall away. We've got targets to 251, 255, 259 on US nat gas. Copper heading lower as well. Heating oil also heading lower, looking very similar to crude. Strangely, we are seeing some of the softs rising. Coffee's just heading back above the cloud. Cocoa looking a bit more bullish up today. Cotton also looking a bit better, and sugar also sitting above the cloud as we speak. Wheat also just short-term bullish, and soybeans the same, even though they're down this morning. And corn also just holding that stronger. So soft's looking better. The big surprise has been the gold price. With all this turmoil, you would have thought gold might be rising, but the stronger dollar has had an impact there on gold. So we are just seeing gold is bearish below the cloud. We've got some downside targets. New upside target has been generated with this move up, but we need to see a move above that to give us a clear target. Silver also bearish below the cloud as we speak on the short term, and the medium term chart is also, and the long term, so quite a bit different picture from gold. US 10-year bond yields sitting at 2.86%. There was an auction yesterday for which there wasn't much take-up in the 10-year bonds. Primarily, investors see bond yields going much higher, and so are holding out for higher yields. We've got a new upside target that's kicked in here off this rise. That pullback has activated a new upside target, and we're now seeing 4.1% as an activated target there. So 3.1 and 4.1, so that's 8% upside to the first target, and now we're seeing targets into the fours. So really significant that new target has been activated. Almost a dead cert that we're going above 3% on bond yields. Apple shares fell yesterday. We've been most worried about Apple. This medium-term chart hitting the cloud from below, looking more and more like Apple is heading into a new medium-term bear trend. Google also just struggled, still just holding its position above the cloud, but a downside target activator of some 14%. And Amazon also just turning bearish. This has been the best looking stock in the major tech majors, but now falling away. And Facebook had a really big sell-off yesterday too, down into the low 170s, and just starting to look bearish below the cloud there. And Microsoft also bearish in the short term, but the long term charts and medium term are still looking bullish. All eyes on the US open today, and it'll be what the US does will be really key for the end of the week. Until Monday, let's hope for a better day. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.